The sky was falling, not metaphorically, not poetically according to the oldest surviving Greek cosmological traditions. The boundary between heaven and earth itself was collapsing. Somewhere in the chaos of primordial time, before mortals existed to record what they would later call the Titanomachy, a war erupted that threatened to unmake existence itself. The children of Kronos had risen against their father, and in doing so, they had ignited a conflict that burned for 10 years without resolution. Mountains became weapons. Islands shattered beneath the feet of combatants, whose very movements created earthquakes. The sea boiled, the forests burned. The very fabric of reality strained under forces it was never designed to contain. And somewhere in the darkness of Tartarus, beings older than time itself waited to see which generation would destroy the other, or whether both would simply cease to exist. This was not a war of conquest. This was a war of annihilation. And the beings we now call the Olympian gods Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Hades, and their siblings were not guaranteed victory. They were not guaranteed survival. In Hesiod's Theogony, the outcome of this cosmic struggle remained uncertain for a decade. The Titans possessed power that rivaled anything the younger gods could muster. They had ruled the universe since its earliest ages, and they would not surrender that dominion without unleashing every terrible force at their command. The universe trembled on the edge of complete structural failure, and the gods who would one day rule from Olympus came terrifyingly close to extinction before their reign ever began. If you find value in deeply researched historical storytelling like this, consider subscribing and leaving a like. These stories take considerable time to uncover, and your support makes this work possible.
Uncovering the layer.
Now, the question that scholars of comparative mythology have grappled with for generations. The Greek gods faced annihilation multiple times during the Titanomachy, during the Gigantomachy, during Typhon's assault on Olympus. Yet somehow, these gods survived. They survived their origin wars. They survived the civilizations that created them. They survived the rise of Rome and the spread of Christianity. Their names remained when temples crumbled. Their stories echoed through centuries when the priests who once chanted them had turned to dust. How? The immediate answer that Greek gods were immortal collapses under scrutiny. The Greek concept of immortality was never absolute. The gods could be wounded, imprisoned, overthrown, cast into eternal darkness. Kronos was immortal, yet he fell. The Titans were immortal, yet they were defeated and erased from the active divine order. Uranos was immortal, yet he was mutilated and removed from cosmic relevance forever. Greek mythology is littered with immortal beings who effectively ceased to exist as meaningful forces. Immortality was merely the absence of natural death. Unnatural ends, defeat, imprisonment, irrelevance remained ever-present threats. So if immortality did not save the Greek gods, what did? The answer lies in the structure of the mythological system itself. The Greek gods survived because Greek mythology functioned as an adaptive organism, constantly reshaping itself to absorb threats, incorporate rivals, and redistribute power in response to changing conditions. This was not a static pantheon. This was a survival system operating across centuries of cultural evolution and religious competition. Understanding this requires examining the mechanisms embedded within the myths themselves, mechanisms that operated beneath the surface of entertaining narratives. Consider the principle of generational overthrow that defines Greek cosmology. Uranos is overthrown by Kronos. Kronos is overthrown by Zeus. Each generation destroys or neutralizes its predecessor. But here lies a crucial distinction. The overthrow is never total annihilation. Uranos is castrated and removed from power, but not destroyed. Kronos is defeated and imprisoned, but continues to exist. The Titans are bound, but not erased. Greek mythology preserves its defeated powers rather than eliminating them. This creates a layered cosmology where older divine forces remain present beneath the current order contained, but not forgotten. The system retains memory of what came before, allowing for reintegration and adaptation as circumstances change. This pattern appears throughout the mythological corpus. Prometheus, a titan who sided against his own kind, is later punished by Zeus, but eventually freed and reconciled to the Olympian order. Atlas remains an active presence in multiple myths. Even Typhon, the most dangerous threat the gods ever faced, is defeated but not annihilated, buried beneath Mount Etna, his rage producing volcanic eruptions, his power channeled into natural phenomena rather than eliminated. Greek mythology absorbs its enemies. It does not simply destroy them, and this absorptive capacity would prove essential to survival across millennia of cultural transformation. The implications extend to the broader religious culture. Greek worship was never centralized. There was no single temple that could be destroyed, no unified priesthood that could be eliminated, no canonical text whose suppression would erase the faith. Each city-state maintained its own religious traditions, its own local variations on divine personalities. Athena in Athens differed from Athena in Sparta. Zeus at Olympia differed from Zeus at Dodona. This decentralization meant no single military defeat or political collapse could eliminate Greek religion in one stroke. When one city fell, the same gods survived in 100 other forms across the Mediterranean. The system had no single point of failure. It was distributed, redundant, and remarkably resilient against catastrophe. This resilience was reinforced by the Greek gods' capacity for absorption and syncretism. When Greek culture encountered foreign religions, the response was not rejection, but identification. Foreign gods became alternative manifestations of existing Greek deities. Egyptian Amun became associated with Zeus. Phoenician Astarte merged with Aphrodite. Phrygian Cybele was integrated as a mother goddess, complementing existing cults. This strategy transformed potential rivals into extensions of the Greek divine order. Rather than fighting religious competition, Greek religion consumed it, grew larger, and became more resistant to displacement. Each absorbed tradition added new worshippers, new rituals, new stories, all strengthening the system while maintaining its core identity. The internal dynamics of the Olympian hierarchy reflected this survival logic. Greek gods competed, constantly scheming, forming alliances, breaking alliances, seeking advantage. Hera plotted against Zeus. Athena and Poseidon contested for patronage of cities. Ares and Athena represented opposing aspects of warfare. Apollo and Dionysus embodied contrasting visions of civilization and ecstasy. This internal conflict might appear to be weakness, but it functioned as strength. Competition prevented any single deity from becoming so dominant that the pantheon's survival depended on their individual fate. Power was distributed, balanced, constantly renegotiated. When circumstances changed, the divine hierarchy could shift without structural collapse. Consider how the relative prominence of gods changed over centuries. Hestia, keeper of the sacred hearth, was once counted among the original Olympians. Yet as Greek society evolved, as warfare, commerce, and political power grew more prominent, Hestia receded, while Athena, Apollo, and Hermes gained centrality. The system accommodated this without crisis. Hestia was narratively presented as voluntarily yielding her place to Dionysus. The mythology adapted, providing a story that explained change while preserving the goddess within the tradition. Nothing was lost, everything was reorganized. Dionysus himself represents one of the most dramatic examples of Greek religion's absorptive capacity. His worship entered the Greek world relatively late, carrying influences from non-Greek sources. His cult was ecstatic, disruptive, threatening to social order. A rigid system might have rejected Dionysus. Greek religion did the opposite, absorbing him into the framework, making him a son of Zeus. integrating his disruptive energies as a controlled form of sacred transgression. The threat became part of the system. The potential destroyer became a protector of the system's relevance. This happened repeatedly across Greek religious history. The survival of Greek gods through Roman conquest demonstrates this on a civilizational scale. When Rome absorbed Greece militarily, the result was not destruction, but expansion. Roman gods were identified with Greek counterparts: Jupiter with Zeus, Mars with Ares, Venus with Aphrodite. The resulting fusion dominated the Mediterranean for centuries. Greek mythology survived conquest not despite Roman power, but through it. The gods survived by becoming useful to their conquerors, adapting to serve new masters while retaining their essential identities. They proved their worth to the very forces that might have destroyed them. Even Christianity's triumph did not truly extinguish the Greek gods. They transformed into literary figures, philosophical symbols, artistic subjects, cultural reference points that persisted through the medieval period and exploded into prominence during the Renaissance. Greek god names mark our planets. Their stories structure Western literature, psychology, and art. The worship ended, but the gods themselves, as cultural entities, as organizing concepts for understanding human experience, never died. They adapted once more, surviving the death of their religion by becoming something larger, a permanent feature of human cultural imagination. What Greek mythology teaches, examined as a survival system rather than a collection of stories, is that power alone does not guarantee continuity. The Titans possessed power equal to the Olympians, yet they fell. Raw strength proves insufficient against adaptive competitors. The Greek gods survived because their system was built for change. It absorbed rather than destroyed. It distributed rather than centralized. It adapted rather than rigidified. It welcomed foreign influences that would have destroyed lesser traditions. It transformed threats into assets and rivals into extensions of itself. The gods who emerged from the Titanomachy were not the same gods who faced Typhon, nor those worshipped in classical Athens, nor those absorbed into Roman religion, nor those who survived as modern archetypes. They changed continuously, and in changing, they endured. The Greeks understood something profound. Immortality means nothing without adaptation. Eternal existence becomes eternal irrelevance if the being cannot reshape itself to meet new conditions. The Titans who refused change became prisoners of time, frozen in Tartarus while history moved on without them. Greek mythology is not a story about the triumph of good over evil. It is a meditation on what survives and why. Survival belongs not to the strongest, but to the most adaptable. The Olympians won through strategic alliances, through liberation of the Cyclopes and Hundred-Handed Ones, through absorption of Titan supporters like Prometheus and Hecate, through constant renegotiation of power that characterized their reign from first moment to last. Extinction was never far from the gods of Greece. It breathed at their backs during every cosmic crisis. They survived not because they were immune to ending, but because they built a system capable of endless transformation. Perhaps that is their most enduring gift, the recognition that adaptability outlives power, that flexibility defeats strength, and that even gods must change or join the countless forgotten forces buried beneath a world that moved on without them.